you are seen. You are worthy. You are not alone. The world loses one person to suicide every 40 seconds. Let's change the stats. Together, we can say not suicide. Not today.
A young woman shows up at her ex-girlfriend's house early one morning, expecting to talk. Soon, after what is reported to be a confrontation, the young woman ends up dead. Several things does not add up, like why was a gun brought to the door? Why was the gun placed in a spot where anyone could grab it? Why was a body moved? Why did the young lady go to the house in the first place? Was this truly stand your ground in self-defense? Or was she lured there just so she could be murdered? We don't know. But what we do know is that something is not right. Join me and my special co-host for this episode, Kiah Penfield, as we examine the case of the murder of Deanna Stevison on this episode of True Crime, Authors and Extraordinary People.
Welcome to True Crime, Authors and Extraordinary People, the podcast where we bring two passions together. The show that gives new meaning to the old adage, truth is stranger than fiction, and reminding you that there is an extraordinary person in all of us. Here is your host, David McClam.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of True Crime, Authors and Extraordinary People. Of course, I'm your man, David McClam. Hey, if you guys haven't already, make sure you follow us on all of our social media. One link to a link tree will get you every place you need to go pertaining to the show. All right, today I have a little bit of a special case. I think at the end of 2023, I told you that I and LaDonna was investigating a case. This is the case we're going to talk about today, and I do have a special co-host with me. So before I introduce her, the name of the case that we're going to talk about today is going to be the murder of Deanna Stevison. And if you pay attention to what we tell you here today, I do believe that you will come to see the case as me and my co-host does. So let me introduce you to who she is. She is a teacher, songwriter, true crime podcaster. She began podcasting in 2023 to bring awareness to the 2017 homicide case of her cousin Deanna Stevison, in which no charges was filed after the case was ruled to be self-defense despite the many holes in the story. She continues to work to bring attention to Deanna's case through the Stand Our Ground podcast and hopes to help others find justice for their loved ones in the future. She is beyond grateful for the love and support shown to her and her family by the true crime community. She is the host of Stand Our Ground podcast and my co-host for this episode. Please welcome Kiah Penfield. Hey, Kiah, welcome.
Hi, it's so great to be here, and also so great to not have to tell you how to pronounce my name.
You have that issue sometimes too, huh? I've lived with that my whole life too. I get it.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for being here. We're going to deep dive a little bit into this case. And if you guys stay to the end, what you need to, I'm going to tell you what we are going to be doing with Kiah to further try to get this case reopened because it needs to be. So stick around to the end for that. So before we begin, whenever we talk about somebody who is no longer here, I like to ask this question first. Can you tell us all about Deanna? What was she so special? What kind of person was she?
Yeah, so Deanna is my cousin, or was my cousin, still weird sometimes, which tends to use. She is an identical twin and has a teenage son. And so unfortunately, because I grew up in a military family, I didn't get to spend as much time with her as I would have liked. So a lot of my favorite stories about her come from other people. But I specifically remember stuff like my mom. So we're related because my mom has a half sister, and Deanna is my mom's half sister's daughter. So my Aunt Sheila, Deanna's her daughter. And so my mom, once she had gotten married, used to babysit Deanna and her cousin, or her twin, Savannah, my other cousin, and have lots of stories of them not necessarily being maybe the most behaviorally mature teenagers, but very much, your typical teenager. And they both had kids pretty young, and it's been really cool to see like that, that definitely changes someone's life, and not always successfully so, but just how dedicated both of them were and have been to their children and to their family and making a better life. And Deanna took kind of not super fantastic situations from her youth and became this really amazing person that I'm really proud to be related to. At the time that she was killed, she was working as a corrections officer at a prison in Milton, Florida.
I think that's one of the things, too, that you bring it up that makes this case so interesting. And I kind of want the audience to know this off the bat, because we're going to talk a little bit about the blue line, because her girlfriend at the time and Deanna both worked for the law. She worked at corrections. Megan was an officer at the time. So
Megan's new girlfriend.
Okay, Megan's new girlfriend was officer at the time. But the thing is it's kind of like, what side of the law pick, right? Mm-hmm. So let's dive into that a little bit. So June 8th, 2017, unfortunately, was the day that changed your life and everybody's life around Deanna for the worst. She shows up at this house. She ends up getting shot and killed. And we'll go a lot more into detail of that. I have seen the crime scene photos, which brought a lot of questions to me. You and I have been back and forth over that. I've listened to 911 calls. One thing I will remind the audience of this is going to go up underneath the stand your ground law. If you guys remember, I talked a lot about this law as well as the council law when I did the Rolf Jarl episode a little bit ago. Same deal. So if you've got how that works, stand your ground. If somebody is invading you on the outside, you've tried to tell them to leave you alone, they will not. If you feel like your life is in danger, you do have the right, at least in Florida, to defend yourself with deadly force. The council law is also the same way, except for it deals with being in your home.
And wildly enough, the stand your ground law actually changed on June 9th, 2017 in Florida. It had been a change that was coming, right? Because, generally laws don't change one day out of the blue, right? They're passed. When it's going to happen. But so it was known that the law was going to change on June 9th, 2017 to actually make it easier for you to claim this as a defense. So the burden of proof changed. Instead of you having to prove that, no, I can prove that I was in fear for my life, it's now on the prosecution to prove that you were not in fear for your life. So the burden of proof shifted a little bit, and that applied to any cases that were had already happened, as long as they hadn't had their initial appearance in court. So it would have applied to this case, even though the law change happened the day after.
So tell us a little about what went down. We do know that Deanna showed up at the house. Inside of the house that morning was Amy, who is Megan's girlfriend. Megan and her mother, Ollie, they do claim that Deanna came over to create a disturbance. She demanded to see, I believe it was Megan at the time. They were trying to keep her out. Ends up at the end that they say, well, she was being forceful. She's choking her and we had to shoot her. Fill us in on everything that you know about that.
It's very easy, I think, to be like, well, they're a family member, right? There's some bias there. And of course there is. But the story is still absolutely insane to me, just the way it's reported in the police interviews. So when you kind of take all three of their accounts together, the way it seems to have gone down is Amy and Megan were sleeping in the bedroom, and Ollie Jane was sleeping on the couch in the living room. So Ollie Jane is the first alerted to this banging on the door because she's the closest in proximity. She can't tell who it is because it's still dark outside. It's very early morning before the sun's up. And she goes to tell Amy and Megan, hey, there's someone at the door. Are you expecting anyone? Of course, they're not expecting anyone. Amy's first response is to arm herself with her Glock. She's like, of course I would. It's early. It's dark. And, I'll give her that. My dad's a gun owner. My wife's former military. They probably would have armed themselves as well. She goes, opens the door. It's Deanna. Deanna's like, I want to see Meg. I want to see Meg. Amy keeps telling her, well, Megan's not coming out. Megan's not coming out. At which point Megan comes out, which is like just worst possible timing. And theoretically, Deanna's said to have told Megan, like, hey, take me home. They all kind of report Deanna seems to have been drinking. We do know she was drinking the night before. And they say, you know, she completely reeked of alcohol. At some point, they're able to, before she gets in the house, Amy closes the door, puts her gun on the table that's next to the TV. So the gun is now in between the door that Deanna's at and the rest of the people in the house, which seems like a really strange place to put your gun in a potentially volatile situation. There's also, we can talk about later, but there's, you know, Megan reports that there's previous domestic violence from Deanna towards her. All charges for trying to get a restraining order were dismissed, so there's no legal evidence that there actually was any domestic violence. But at this point, somehow, some way, Deanna either opens the door or someone opens the door for her. It's not exactly clear, but she's able to get in the house, pass the gun, starts choking people. Also, somehow they're outside of the house choking people. It's not clear when they move in or out. Ollie Jane reports that her glasses are torn off her face and her phone is thrown because she's trying to call 911. But eventually she's able to get in past everyone, grab the gun, and shoots a warning shot. And I'll leave it there so that we can discuss some of the problems with that account.
Well, the first thing I will say, and I know you may have a different view on this than me. I'm not in law enforcement. I have friends that are, but I do come from a military family as well. And I kind of asked this same question when I did the Ralph Yarl case, because it sounds just like it. That's what happened. Ralph Yarl shows up at the man's door. He's there by mistake. He rings the doorbell, and the first thing this guy says is, I'm going to grab my gun. Now, maybe because I have an alarm at my house that I do see outside, my first thought, even at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I live in some pretty rough neighborhoods, would not be to grab my gun. Unless I'm expecting to have to shoot somebody.
Yeah, I have to tell you, even when because I've like lived alone as a young woman in like Indianapolis in an apartment where they literally wouldn't deliver Jimmy John's because it was too dangerous, which is like, we can't deliver you a sandwich. Your neighborhood's too dangerous. And like, I remember at one point hearing shots outside of my apartment window, and all I thought was, wow, that's scary. No part of me was like, wow, I need a weapon for myself. I was like, I know nobody has a problem with me, so I should be good. Like, I understand random crime happens, but like, you know, the rate that random crime is going to happen is very rare. And there's definitely some family suspicion that Deanna may or may not have been lured to the house.
Which brings that up, because that's what I was going to say is, do we think, because I know what I feel, that, you know, being that they've dealt with Deanna before, they know her demeanor, being that she's dated Megan before, should know what she's like in all aspects, right? It wasn't like they was together for a short period of time. So,
yeah, they were together for 6 years.
Right. So I know when my wife is drunk, if she is, how she's going to react, what I should or should not do. My thought, and this question I have for you, wouldn't you kind of feel that, oh, okay, it's Deanna, wouldn't you just go put the gun down or put it away where it's safe if you're not intending to cause her bodily harm that day?
Yeah, absolutely. Or if you are really worried, I'm not putting the gun down if I'm actually terrified you're going to hurt someone. Like, you're either putting it in a safe location or you're keeping it on you. And I mean, that's part of, from what I understand as well, that's part of the military training or police training, is you don't take off your weapon unless you're, one, prepared to shoot someone, or two, putting it away in a secure location. And I've just got to say, I don't feel like the table in between your door and your living room is a very safe location.
And we keep harping on that, guys, because if you ever seen this photo, I've seen the photo, the gun is like anybody could grab it. Right. So it's just right there. I mean, you look, I'm looking at the photo and it's like, why is the gun sitting right here on the counter? So anybody had access to that anytime. It could have went the other way. Right. So if Deanna felt like her life was in danger, she could have grabbed the gun and shot whoever was around her at that point in time too as well. So it could have went both ways.
And they know that she's trained with firearms because she's a corrections officer. It's not like she's someone who's going to be scared of using a gun if she feels like she needs it. So
let's talk about this warning shot that we don't know what happened to it, because there was not enough bullet fragments to claim that there was a warning shot. And even if there was, then there should be evidence of that. If you shot it straight up, if you was inside the house, which I can't remember if they were claiming inside the house or outside, but if you're definitely inside the house, it's going to lodge into the ceiling of that. They did find a bullet, which kind of begs another question, but they found a bullet lodged in one of the storage units outside the storage door, which was kind of high.
Ollie Jane says that's where she aimed the warning shot, that she aimed it towards the storage door. And of course, there's 3 bullet casings that are found at the scene, which I actually called you yesterday, right? Because I had been trying to see if I could get any more information from the 911 call, and we were able to hear exactly how many bullets were shot and when the gun was shot. And you had told me you were going to listen to that. I'm not sure, or that you were going to play with it too. I'm not sure if you had a chance to yet, but the reason I bring that up is because we have clear gunshot, bang, it must be the warning shot, and then someone screaming, and then bang, bang, bang in quick succession.
I did try to enhance that. It was beyond that, but I could hear the bullets. Because I think the screaming of it was so loud that it actually deterred. I couldn't even transcribe it because it wasn't picking that up. But I heard exactly what you heard. And I was like, yeah, this don't add up. So now we're here. They say that now Deanna's in the house. Why is she in the house if you already have a gun out? I would think that she would retreat at that point and back up. Before I go on, let me ask you this. I didn't get a chance to look this up. Is there a duty to retreat law in Florida?
Oh, good question. So there kind of is, and I can't remember the exact specifics of it, but when I looked it up, it would not have applied to the situation. So they did not have any duty to retreat from the situation. They didn't have any duty unless they had lured her there. That's the only situation where it would apply, or if they were engaged in illegal activity. That's when things kind of change. So they weren't even obligated legally to give a warning shot.
So guys, if you don't know, duty to retreat means that you do have a duty to try to peacefully walk away from a situation before bodily harm occurs. Listen to my neighbor dispute episode. That's what I did, even though there's no duty to retreat law in California. I could have just hauled off of him in the jaw. But it's always good to just go ahead and try to retreat. Being that the stand your ground law is what it is, and they're saying that she pretty much invaded them in their home, they did not have the duty to retreat, so they did not have to pull themselves away from that. Okay, so now at this point, Deanna's been shot. Well, let's go back. So before all of this happened, they're stating that Deanna was choking. I think it was Megan.
At some point, I think she's choked all of them in the story. She's definitely. We laugh just because it's one person who's intoxicated against 3 people, and so it's hard to imagine how she's choking multiple people or keeping all of them from doing something. I saw somebody commented originally when it happened, they're reporting about Deanna as if she's an octopus. Like, how is this possible? But yeah, so the main person she's said to have choked is Amy. And Amy at the time is wearing 2 necklaces around her neck that are like rope necklaces. And those are found outside the house. And for context, by the way, I don't know if we've mentioned it, Deanna's body is found outside of the house. Then there's only 1 bullet casing inside the house. So it seems, if you're looking at the evidence photos, that the majority of the struggle has taken place just on the porch area. But so these necklaces are found taken off. And what's interesting is when you look at those crime photos of Amy and her neck, I'm no forensic expert, but I've definitely played some murder mystery games that have the ones you get in the mail and they have the pictures or whatever. And I understand these are not the most accurate, but the images of that, or that I've seen on the ID channel or whatever of people who have been choked, it's very clear that they've been choked. You can see it. Whereas the picture of Amy's neck looks like when you get a rope burn. There's very clear rope burn going around her neck, and there's no bruising. There's no purple. There's just some red scratch, and it's not even the full circumference of her neck. And there's not a gap where the thumbs would be. Yeah,
I'm actually looking at the crime scene photo now of Amy, and I had the same thought. Here's the other thing that kind of came up, unless I missed it, but I've listened to a podcast where I'll give you my opinion on him at the end of this, but I've listened to his show. I've looked up many different forms of information besides yours, right? because I never want anybody to say, you're just going to take her word for because it's cousins. No, I've dug into this. And her wounds is exactly that. I'm expecting to see a handprint, or if she says that she's strangled with something, some type of a mark around the neck. On the right side of her neck, there's just like a reddish wound. It looks like somebody could have just scratched her, or maybe she even had a mosquito bite or something and had a rash there. Yeah. The other thing that I may have missed is I never heard anybody say anything about being hit about the face. Amy is showing marks on the face. She's showing a mark on the right side or left side of her face and the cheek, but nobody said anything about that in the interrogation.
So I did actually listen to Megan's interrogation the other day because I was editing it to redact it to put it on my podcast for subscribers. And she does say, like, she's hitting people. She just kept hitting people. And so my assumption is maybe that she's hitting Amy in the face. But yeah, you would think that would be kind of memorable to be specifically like, well, she punched her right under the eye. So yeah, I have no idea.
But if Deanna was intoxicated the way that they say that she was, then that mark on the face looks very intentional. Somebody who's drunk is very sloppy. So if they're just swinging, you should have a bruise maybe in the eyes, somewhere around, maybe you're trying to duck. I don't see that when I look at these photos.
Oh, for sure. And I also just realized, if you're out there thinking, maybe she was trying to choke her, but she wasn't able to do it super successfully, and that's why it doesn't look so strong. They report that Amy is literally unable to breathe, losing oxygen, that they get knocked over to the floor during this choking accident. So this is really the impetus for why Ollie Jane is like, she's going to kill my daughter. I need to do something. This is their we are in peril for our lives that makes stand your ground applicable to this case, is the choking.
But Amy was a police officer. She has a Glock. She probably has handcuffs somewhere. They're trained to deal with these kind of situations when they're in the field, the people they don't know. Why does anybody ever ask you? Because I'm like, why didn't she kick in some police training? Why didn't she try to overthrow her and put her on the ground to tie her hands up?
So the only thing I've heard about this is I was able to talk to someone who has some contacts in the Escambia County Sheriff's Office, because there's a lot of corruption going on there, which, we'll talk more about later. But essentially what I heard is this person asked around about Amy and was like, what was the general vibe on her? Did people feel like she was a crooked cop? Did people whatever? And people said that she was just really, really bad at her job. And so there's almost some lack of surprise that she wouldn't lean into the police training because she was considered to be ineffective as a police officer, which is, a whole other can of worms. But
now we've talked about this before we go on, and it makes no sense. So when it comes to Escambia, I did ask you, did you feel like that Deanna being a lesbian played a role? You did say yes. The funny thing is all three of these women are lesbians, right? Megan dated Deanna for 6 years. Why do you think that being a lesbian played that part, and why are they showing favoritism to Amy over Deanna?
I don't think it's so much that, they were biased against Deanna or anything because she was a lesbian, as much as this is not a case you want to make the headlines. And it didn't. I mean, there's maybe 4 articles about it from local news sources. You did not want to have a headline that said former Escambia County Sheriff's Office employee kills current girlfriend's former girlfriend in lesbian love triangle gone wrong. That's not the kind of publicity that you want. And so I think, and I know particularly there's, I've heard that the sheriff at the time, who was David Morgan, had a very strong view of what was and was not moral, and did not feel that any sort of homosexuality was appropriate. And that may or may not have played a role in how Amy was perceived in the department as well, for whatever that's worth. But so I definitely feel like this is not something that he would have wanted to become a big deal and reflect on his sheriffship or whatever you would call it.
You're exactly right. Because, being that I've been a true crime podcaster for a while, I kind of credit myself on knowing a lot about a whole bunch of different cases. And until you reached out to me, I was like, who is Deanna Stevison? Never heard of this case before. So then I go and dig this up, and I'm like, dude, there's like nothing out here. There's, you know, and all of it has to be favored towards Escambia too, because all I pulled up was there would be no murder charges filed. And so you're like, well, I want to know what happened. They give you this brief, right, a synopsis of what took place, which again, when you read it, is skewed towards Escambia Police Department, Amy, and the rest. And then there was one small article that was released about you guys that said that the family is looking to get justice. And so you took it upon yourself to do stand our ground. So there really is not that much information on this case out there.
Yeah. And what's disappointing too is, and I know we've talked about this, so I was able to get all of the records that the police have, all of the records that the sheriff's office has, which I've provided to David. So David also has them. And it's shocking some of the things that are not in that police file that you would think would be in the police file, including things that are referenced in some of those articles that are done at the time that I've reached out to police and said, hey, this is in the article and you don't have it. And they go, oh, they must have gotten it from a different source. And then there's stuff in police interviews that I see being handed over to Detective Jimmy Tatum. And I contact the sheriff's office and say, hey, I watched this be given to him. It's not in the police files. And they're like, well, we gave you everything we have.
So now, after all of this debacle, supposedly Deanna is choking people out. Ollie Jane says, I got to stop this. Supposedly she shoots a warning shot. Deanna keeps going, which I don't believe. That's why I asked you, do you think if she heard a gunshot, is she going to stop? You know, I think most people would, no matter what state that they're in.
Oh, absolutely. And also worth noting, because we haven't noted this yet, she left her car running and she left her cell phone in the car. You know, no part of her was thinking this was going to be a long trip. I mean, I've never gone to someone's apartment to like try and hurt them or intimidate them, but I just don't feel like I would leave my car running with the door open if that was what I was planning on doing.
Right. I mean, my car would be off. I'm ready for the long haul. So Ollie gets her hands on the gun and she shoots Deanna, which looks more like in the back. And the reason I say that is because you guys need to understand that the way that the photos look, and I need to let you guys know that her body was not in the position that it was when she was shot. They had actually moved her body before 911 was called and the police came. So if you look at these crime scene photos, it looks like that Deanna was pretty much just rolled outside of the door. And the way that she's laying is very awkward for somebody to be laying. There was like a stand or something at the end where her leg looked like it was wrapped around. So the way my belief is that Deanna was trying to retreat. And she was far, and everybody said, but no one listened. Everybody says she was in the house. I want to point that out because it seems like the police is ignoring that. They're all saying she's fully in the house at this point. But when you get there, she's outside.
And 3 bullet casings are outside.
Right. So, and one's in the house. So if you did the majority of the shooting in the house, why is all the bullet casings that matter outside the door? So I don't know if you have a difference, but just from, I mean, I'm no investigator, but this is what I look at. I think Deanna was in there. The gun got pulled. She was trying to get out. Ollie ends up shooting her anyways. Regardless of what Deanna said or did, threw her hands up, whatever, she was going to be shot that day. The way it looks is she probably was shot trying to get out the door. So she was shot right in the frame of the door inside of the house. But if the police comes and find that she is inside of the house, that opens up more questions as to why is she in the house now and you shot her. So now we have to roll her out. So it looks like that whatever they're trying to create, maybe that she was not trying to flee or drug somebody outside the house with her and had to be shot. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I definitely think she was trying to retreat. I think, you know, the way that this story is put forward is that she was shot while she was choking Amy. Well, somehow with all those shots hitting Deanna in the back, Amy doesn't end up being shot. So, you know, that's worth noting. There's one bullet that can't be located. So there's the one that you mentioned in the storage door. There's 2 that are in Deanna's body. There's one bullet that's never been found, but we see its bullet casing. But what's wild is we wouldn't even know that the body had been moved because the police, I feel like really tried to ignore it in their reports. The only reason we know that the body is moved is because it happens while a neighbor is calling 911, and I'm very grateful for her. She yells across the apartment complex, "What are you doing? Stop moving her." And that's the only reason we know that they were moving the body. And when Detective Jimmy Tatum is talking to this witness about it in a police interview, he's very adamant that Amy says she was putting her in the recovery position to help her, even though she had just tried to kill Amy and she had just been choking her. But it doesn't matter. Amy's a good person, so she put Deanna in the recovery position to try and save her life. And he pushes this narrative on the witness who reported it.
Now, just so we can clear this up for the audience, Ollie Jane does not have any type of weapons experience as far as shooting a gun that we know of, right?
Correct.
So that means that at best, she could be a sloppy shooter. And I agree with you on that. How are you going to hit somebody directly like that if you don't know what you're doing and miss the person you're trying to shoot, miss the person that you're not meaning to shoot?
Absolutely. Which brings us to a lot of people question, was Ollie Jane really the one who shot all 4 shots?
Well, then that begs this question too. In Ollie Jane's photos when they arrested her, she has a hand that is full of blood. Did she cut herself somewhere, or is this Deanna's blood from trying to roll her outside?
So I told you my wife's former military. She says it looks very much like almost exactly like the type of wound you would get, and I can't remember what it's called. A Beretta bite? So, my wife's right across the room. A Beretta bite, where the see, you can tell I'm not a gun person. The thingy,
the slider,
shoots back, yeah, and it gets you in the hand and like knocks some of your skin off, and you bleed. And that's what it seems to be described as in police reports as well. And it really does look like that. And I think you have the photos there. I believe it's her left.
Yeah,
no, it's her. Is it her left hand?
Looks like it's her right.
Her right hand. So that's right, because she's right-handed. Amy is right-handed. Megan is left-handed, which could be, a way that we could try and figure out potentially if Megan's the shooter, if there's evidence of a left-handed shooting, but we don't know because very few tests were done.
Well, speaking of tests, that brings me to this, because this is the other part that baffles me in this case. I've looked through every crime scene photo that there was, and I really want to hone in. I was trying to give myself a timeline of maybe how long it took them to get there and what they did once they got to Deanna's body. Deanna lays here for a long period of time with everything exposed. What I mean by that is they are accusing her of choking someone, which means you're not being very careful. I'm assuming that Amy's going to say that the marks on her face are scratches, but her hands are not covered by bags for a long time, which would preserve any type of skin particles that she has underneath her nails. Did they even do any type of testing just on her nails at all so that they could say yes or no to this?
None that I've been able to find, no.
So once again, to me, that's shoddy police work. That should be the first thing you do. Get there, examine the scene, make sure everything's what it is. Let's bag up some hands. I mean, I'm no police officer, but I have friends that are investigators and police, and they like, man, the first thing we would have did was call for bags and get all this up just so we could preserve everything that was there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the family is really upset because they do gunshot residue testing or swabs on everyone, but they never send that off for testing. So we don't actually know the results of that. Now, I will say, for whatever it's worth, a mutual friend who's in the Florida area, but does not work for Escambia County, but works in forensics, was like, it's very unlikely that you'd get anything worthwhile from the gunshot residue testing, and it's very expensive. It's hard to tell who shot a gun just from that. It's more if they were to say, I wasn't in the area, then you might be able to say, well, yeah, you are. There's gunshot residue on your hands. You were definitely there. But it is particularly troubling when you see it's another test that hasn't been done.
So if the feeling is that Ollie Jane did not shoot all of the shots, in your mind, who do you think shot the other one?
So I think it was very likely to be Megan. And I went back and forth for a while. Was it Amy or Megan? Because Amy would have that police experience, right? But it was ultimately looking through the text messages between Deanna and Megan and hearing the 911 call yesterday. that I think right now I'm leaning towards it being Megan. Now, of course, right, this is my disclaimer. I do not know that Megan shot my cousin Deanna. All individuals are innocent until proven guilty. But that's what I lean towards.
Another thing that baffles me, because of the fact that there was no test ran on the gun. And if you're looking at it, it's Amy's gun. So the only two people's prints that should be on that gun if you ran the test would be Amy and Ollie Jane's. Megan should be nowhere on that. But if you don't run the test, you don't find this out. So again, this is why I said in 2023 coming out, cover up. There's so many things here that is just smacking of cover up.
Yeah.
Now, Ollie Jane gets interrogated. She contradicts herself in a couple spots of that interrogation. What do you think about her interrogation? Do you think that they heard that and overlooked some things? What do you feel about that?
So it's really interesting because there's a few places, and remember, Ollie Jane was taken away almost immediately by police once they arrived on scene. So unlike Amy and Megan, who did have a chance to talk to each other before they were taken into the police station, Ollie Jane was taken almost immediately once police arrived. So any coaching perhaps that would have happened by Amy had to happen before police get there. But there's a few times in the police interview where either the investigator seems to be like pushing something on her, like, no, we know you thought she was going to hurt Amy, right? You thought she was going to kill Amy, right? Because he knows he needs that standard in order to not charge her. But there's also a few things that she says that later when they let Amy join her in the police investigation room, which, by the way, what? But when Amy joins her in the police investigation room, some of the things that she said previously are then almost word for word what Amy tells her later. So like, she's clearly in shock. She's clearly distressed. I, in my heart, believe Ollie Jane, if this was a planned killing, I don't think Ollie Jane was part of the plan. I think she was just as shocked as how it turned out as anyone else. And if she's lying, is likely lying to try and protect her daughter. But she says, I don't know if they ricocheted. I don't know. I shot a warning shot. I don't know what happened. I don't know if they ricocheted. And later, Amy comes in and she's saying they must have ricocheted. They must have ricocheted. And really, the only thing that Ollie Jane ever says is, I shot a warning shot towards the storage door. She didn't even realize that Deanna was dead until she's told by investigators.
Right. And I will say this, even though I don't like anybody in this case, I did look at that several times, and Ollie Jane really does look like that she's baffled. She does look like that she did not know that she was dead. She also does look very sorrowful in the shots they took when they put her in the car.
And she immediately asked about the family. She's like, oh my gosh, what about her family? Like, she has a kid. And so that to me is a big deal too.
Right. And so my mind, I put on my investigator hat. I'm like, so what could have happened that night too? They say Ollie Jane's laying on the couch, unsuspected of anything going on. She comes in, this stuff starts happening. In my mind, I'm like, okay, what if she did pick up the gun and fire that warning shot? But then what if, Amy's yelling, why don't you go ahead and shoot her? You need to do this, but Ollie Jane can't do it. So like you say, somebody else picks up the gun and ends that.
Yeah, or she fires the warning shot. She's like, okay, good. Now she'll retreat. She puts it down. Someone else can grab it. We know they're not being careful with where the gun's being placed. And, I'm aware that I don't know if all three of them are, but I know at least one of them has been listening to my podcast or following some of the coverage of this case. And on the off chance, Ollie Jane, that you are listening to any of this, I really beg of you, if you know that something happened other than what's being told, please tell us, because, you've gotten some more time for your kid. You had an entire family lose someone in their family that is continuing to cause pain and affect her child. And if it's because you're not telling the truth, please tell the truth. And otherwise, shame on you. Really, shame on you.
Before we do move on, I do want to kind of touch on that a little bit. Her child did know, Megan and Amy. What is it like right now? How is it? How is he doing? What's going on with that? How does he feel about the whole situation?
Yeah, so he just celebrated a birthday. He and my mom have a birthday around the same time, and my mom just traveled down, so they were able to all celebrate their birthday together. But I know just in general, there's a lot of the family who I've heard from some members of the family, like, I literally have to pretend she never existed in order to get through every day. I pretend that I made her up, that Deanna was not real. I have a member of the family who works with me closely on this and gets all the updates and is like, it's the most painful thing I've ever done going back through all of this with you, but it's the only way I can make it matter or make sense in my mind. And, Deanna's son has absolutely had, he was still in school when this all happened, and it absolutely affected his schooling and, some behavior stuff. How would it not? I don't think there's anybody who loses their mom in a brutal murder has nothing happen as a response to that. And it's like, well, yeah, but I'm going to make straight A's and do there's very clear trauma there, which is really sad. And, I know that there's a lot of the family that has to intentionally keep themselves away from this case and coverage of it in order to protect themselves. And I believe he's one of them. But I do know that doesn't mean that they don't hope for justice.
Well, that's what we're all about, trying to get that for her. Now, the funny thing to the audience may be of why we feel that Deanna lost her life, and it was over a house. Tell us a little bit about that and why this house became so important to this case.
This house, it's absolute insanity. And the crazy thing for me, too, is living where I live, and I'm sure living where you live, too, like, the housing market is insane. And so, the price value of the house that's in question would not even buy, like, a studio apartment in my area. So, which makes it even crazier to me. But so Megan and Deanna bought a house together. And, at the time that Megan leaves Deanna for Amy, it becomes clear that this is going to be an issue. So over and over again in the text messages between them, I have over a month-long period, it's mentioned 6 or 7 separate times by Megan. Are you going to move out of the house? Okay, well, are you planning on moving out of the house or staying in the house? There are people who say Deanna told them that, she knew Megan wanted the house and she knew Megan wanted to move Amy into the house, and literally told people, Megan will get that house over my dead body. When the restraining order is placed by Megan with very little evidence of anything actually happening by Deanna, the biggest thing Megan asks for in that restraining order is to have sole custody of the house. At a certain point, they're kind of sharing the house. Megan kicks Deanna's son out of the house. And ultimately, who is currently living in that house? Megan and Amy Plunkett.
So why did Megan and Deanna break up in the first place?
So, of course, the majority of what I see is either through their text messages or through what Deanna put on Facebook. So I'm sure there's probably a different story from Megan's side. But my understanding is because Megan cheated on Deanna with Amy. Now, there are text messages where Megan says, well, you cheated too. But all of that seems to have come after Megan had already cheated. So it's, that very typical relationship drama, right? Of, well, you're going to cheat, I'm going to cheat. Now we've both cheated. Now we can both be mad at each other. But it seems that's why it broke up. And it broke up after they had already taken engagement photos and sent out save the dates for a wedding and had a wedding date and all of that. So it was not that any breakup's easy, but it was very much not an easy breakup. It was a very committed relationship. So was thought that really went crashing down.
So I just want to bring it up because I want to ask you this, because I know this is a question out there. Is it possible that Deanna was mad because she was a jilted lover? She felt like she was done wrong, and now she wanted to go over there that day and create havoc for revenge.
So that's what's insane to me is in looking at the text messages between them, there are so many text messages where Deanna says, you know what, fine, I'm done. And then what happens is Megan will text her back. And kind of every time Deanna seems to be done, Megan gives her a little bit of hope that it's not over. A little bit of hope that maybe she's still into her, or, there's she says I had no idea if she was seeing someone and we only would talk about the house and bills and the dogs, but she's sending pictures of here's what I'm planning to do to my hair. Here's a selfie from my family vacation in Oregon for my brother's wedding. It's very confusing for me. I can't imagine how confusing it was for Deanna. And I know from talking to the last person to see Deanna before she went over to that apartment, he says that night she was extremely conflicted and that she wanted to be done with it, but she just didn't understand why Megan would keep stringing her along.
And I'm sure she never thought in a million years that Megan would attempt to or have somebody kill her either. So there's no reason for her to be afraid of that.
Absolutely.
So in my opinion, from all that I've seen, I think she was lured there. I think because of the way that it's been stated that Deanna showed up, like you said, I have the photos too. Yes, her BMW, very nice BMW, by the way. She worked the butt off for that car. It was running, cell phone in there. It looked like she may have came from work or going or whatever because she had her work pants on. Her work shirt was off in the back. All this is photographed. So it's almost as if somebody called her up, either said, come over here or said something to piss her off. And she goes, you know what? On the way to work, I'm just going to stop by. But it was not supposed to be a confrontation. She just wanted to see Amy, I guess it was at that point in time, to come out. Nobody would, or Megan, and nobody would let her come out. And it ended up in this. Do you feel like that is a possibility that she was lured there?
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of the family believes that's very, very likely the case. So she had worked that kind of not overnight shift, but she had worked that day shift and then gone out drinking at a local bar and then gone over to stay at a friend's house. And she told him, because he was like, you know, you've been drinking too much to drive, don't drive. And she said, I'll be on the couch when you wake up. And he says, I know in my heart of hearts that at that time she was not going to leave. Things were fine. So between the time that I went to bed, which was at about like 2 a.m., to the time she showed up there, which was 5 a.m.-ish, something had to change. We've looked at her phone records. We haven't been able to necessarily find if there was a call from Megan or not. But at the same time, if there was, I would not put it past someone in the investigations department to have deleted it, which is, you know, the sad, scary part. I would love to have trust that the evidence I see is the reliable evidence. But because of other things the police have done, whether intentionally or not, I can't trust the other things that they've done.
And the one thing I would bring up, just in case anybody's confused on how real estate, property, and all that kind of stuff works, with Deanna being dead, being that both her and Megan was on that deed, they are both owners of the house. They're responsible for it. So if somebody passes away that's on that deed with you, it just automatically goes to that person. So you're the owner of the house now. So by getting rid of her, there is no question whose house it becomes.
So what's wild about that too is before Deanna's killed, Megan does see a lawyer, a real estate lawyer, about the house. She texts Deanna about that. And the biggest problem is because Deanna's still on it, it technically, Deanna's half should go to Deanna's heir, her son. So what Megan was able to do was in probate court say, well, Deanna hasn't been paying her share of the mortgage and the pool bills or whatever. So her estate, her heirs owe me this much money, but I'll forgive it. Essentially, this is a little bit of an oversimplification, but essentially, I'll forgive it if I get the house. And so they appoint a guardian ad litem to represent Deanna's son, who whatever ends up happening, the house ends up getting sold. Which, by the way, my Aunt Sheila found out about that in October of 2023, and it happened in like 2019. So clearly, guardian ad litem did a fantastic job of keeping her and Deanna's estate informed. And they saw nothing, not a single cent. So it's all gone. And the down payment for that home was paid for from Deanna's inheritance from either her father or grandfather. I don't remember which, but someone in her family passing away. It was her inheritance that paid for the down payment.
Now, did Deanna have a full will, or did she just go and put that in provision for her son for the house?
I had no idea actually what her will looked like. That's just, I believe, Florida probate law.
Well, I will say this as an error of caution. People get a will and a trust. My wife and I just went through this. She has brothers and sisters that are vultures. And her father passed almost 3 years ago, but he left her the house. Mm-hmm. The first thing they said, they didn't even wait till his body was cold. Oh, we need to have extra death certificates because we need to go to probate for the house. Like, no, you don't. We got a trust. Mm-hmm. So living trust people get one. What that means is you can will whatever you give to somebody, you can put them in charge of it now. You just take care of it till you die. And then when you pass away, it just shifts. There's no question. And we had a mortgage company that we're now suing because they forgot to put the deed back in the trust, which made us have to go to court to do all of that kind of stuff. So,
that's why. Yeah, I had my wife do our will. She was like, "This is so morbid. Why are we doing this?" And I was like, "Because I want to be real clear." And like, we don't have kids. But I'm like, I just don't want this to be a big issue. And now you can also appoint who takes care of your pets, which is really cool and not at all relevant to this case. But just so people know, you can say who you want to take care of your pets, and you can put money in your will for your pets.
Yeah, and you got to have that done because, even if you don't feel like you and your wife have anything, you'll be surprised who comes out of the woodwork saying you owe them all kinds of stuff when you're no longer here. All right, so it's a very hard case. It's very touching because of the fact that the way that it is. Why do you think they came up all of a sudden with everything that's here? I just don't feel like that the investigators did their job. Before I go on, let's talk about that. There's a lot of corruption around Escambia Sheriff's Department. There's even a lady that you've talked to that has done nothing but a whole deep dive history and that tells everything about Escambia. What are you thinking about Escambia? Are they really corrupted? Do you think that that's why this case went the way that it went?
I think there's so many factors leading to this. It's hard to point to just one, but absolutely it was a factor. By the way, that blog is the Conjuring Justice blog. If anybody wants to check that out, by Jimmy Staley. And what's disappointing to me is seeing how many different people's lives were hurt by what this sheriff's office was doing. Whether it's not following up on leads about girls who have been sex trafficked, which how do you not follow up on a lead on that to try and get them home? Or just kind of ignoring what's going on in a homicide. I mean, Megan's police interview, when you get rid of all the silent time, it's less than 15 minutes. So someone dies in front of her. There are no witnesses. She's interviewed for less than 15 minutes. So I struggle with saying that it was definitely a police cover-up because, a couple reasons. And one of those being, I'm still hoping that they will decide to reopen the case and help us. I also think it's entirely likely that this was just an investigator who was really, really bad at his job. And because it was a good old boys club and no one wanted to have to hold anybody accountable, that was allowed to continue. So I don't know how systemic it is. And I also hope that, anybody who is or was employed by Escambia County Sheriff's Office and knows something that's going on is willing to talk and help make sure that all families, including mine, affected by this get some justice. And if you don't feel comfortable coming out to publicly, Jimmy Staley of that Conjuring Justice blog has kept many a source anonymous. She did not even share names to me when I was getting information from her, which I super appreciate, and can help get that information out there without having to drag your name through the mud. But yeah, I do think whether it's police cover-up or police incompetence, that was a huge, huge factor in this case because, you have so much going on too. The last thing you want is, somebody that we used to employ just killed someone.
So I do want to warn you guys that as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not just saying this because I know Kiah now, I do my own research. On one of your episodes last year, you complained about a true crime podcast by the name of True Red Crime Vault that is on YouTube. The host of this show, I don't know where he gets his information, but I kind of agree with you because, and I'll tell you why I do. When I talked to you, you said you feel like maybe somebody reached out to him from Megan's side of things. The information in which he has full interrogation videos and he's going through each video and telling you what he thinks. And at the end, he concludes that nobody's done anything wrong because they didn't say anything bad about her and they wasn't trying to put her down. And I'm sitting here going, I don't know what interrogation video you looking at.
Right.
And then he clickbaits. And if you guys don't know what that means people will create a title to make you want to click on their video so that they get the view for that. He titled the video "When the Cop Turns Out to Be the Suspect," which is not what happened in the situation.
People were so mad in the comments.
Yeah, I read some of those too, and I'm just like, and I think if I didn't, I had to pull myself away from it because I was too tempted to come and saying, "Dude, you need to get your facts straight. she's widely available. Why don't you reach out to Kiah? Why don't you ask for information that she already has?
I actually messaged him on TikTok. And he messaged me back. So this was in November. So I messaged him. I said, hello, you recently covered my cousin's case, but you got a bit wrong. And then I told him what he got wrong. Said, I'm covering the case on a podcast. I'd love to sit down and talk with you and give you access to more details and documents if you're interested. I have this much dollars worth of records from Escambia County Sheriff's Office. And he sent back a numbered list for his response. 1, I'm sorry about your cousin. 2, my bad for getting the cop wrong. Forgive me. 3, if you posted your vids on YouTube, you'd get more traction. And then I responded, thank you so much for responding. Out of curiosity, how did you hear about the case? I'd be interested to see other coverage on it as I'm only familiar with 2 or 3 articles on it. And he said, and this is what gets me and why I'm suspicious of how he got the case. He says, just Googling the names is all. And I found it on some random site and looked into it.
And I, as a podcaster who investigates all this, could tell you he's far from wrong. He's lying, because if he found all of that, I could have found the exact same information that he found. And there's very few articles, very few news articles. Most of the articles is towards that they were not going to be charged. Nothing that deep dives into Deanna's case at all. So I agree. Somebody reached out to him from the other side. And it irritates me that he says, if you put your vids up on YouTube, you'll get more traction, which proves he just wants the views. If he really wants to tell the truth about true crime and why people from true crime is slowly moving away from YouTube, is because we're censored over there. We can't say pedophile or murder. If you watch a true crime video over there, all of these words are bleeped. And I feel like I need to be able to say whatever that it is. So if you guys watch that video, if you listen to him, his mind was already made up before we even got 20 minutes into the first interrogation video. So he already knew he was going to say it was self-defense. Yeah,
and there's also a lot of, we mentioned Ollie Jane's police interview is very emotional, and it is very clear that she was, if involved, remorseful, and very likely not involved if this was planned. And he puts that last very intentionally and spends a lot of time on it. And so there's a ton of people in the comments, right, that are like, this poor woman is now traumatized. I can't believe this lady, showed up. Shame on her. And she should have been thinking about her son when she decided to show up at that apartment that night or that morning. And I think it was also a little bit of a good reminder for me, as somebody who is young and grew up with the internet, of as easy as it is to comment on, any situations that's going on. I think about the rich people who went in the submarine, with the video game joystick for the controller. And we were all trolling the heck out of them, being like, what were they thinking? What did they think was going to happen? And it was easy to do, and it felt funny. But there was also someone on the other side of that comment somewhere, whether they were seeing it or not, but likely seeing it, who had lost their family over it, whether it was a smart decision by their family member or not that was having to deal with it. And I had to be pulled away from reading the comments on that video because I was outraged. I was trying to get people to find and hear the truth. And I was like, I can't reach all 1,000 people who have watched this.
And what gets you about this guy, too, is if you're coming into a case, any case, from an unbiased perspective, you're looking at everything. And he never once said anything like, she was with Megan for 6 years. No one's crying. No one's shedding a tear. Amy supposedly got choked out. No one's emotional. It was like they were reading a fairy tale book when they were sitting here getting this interrogation. Nobody was disturbed except for Ollie Jane. And he never touches on that. So I would stay away from True Crime Vault. If he's listening to me and mad, feel free to email me, truecrimeauthors@gmail.com. I'll take you on, because it's misinformation like this that skews the mind of the public. And no matter what he feels, here's how I think. Even though I'm just a true crime podcaster and I tell these stories, my words influence people in what they believe. They may have a difference of opinions now by listening to my take on it. So I feel that it is of the utmost importance that I give you accurate information. So if you're going to make that judgment, you have every piece of right information you need to make such a call, especially when it deals with somebody's life whose family is still very much in this situation and still investigating it.
Well, and not for nothing, is because this case has not been in the courts yet, but could still go to courts. There is something to be said for tainting a jury pool. And, granted, all of the coverage to some extent does that. But I think something even as family I try to do is be as unbiased as I can in my presentation when I'm giving it on my own podcast as, a source of information. We have to be really mindful of the fact that anything we do or put out publicly in true crime affects how things could turn out. So I think especially we just saw this in, I can't even think of the name of the case now, and I was in Indiana when it happened. Liberty German, and I can't remember the other girl's name. I'm so sorry. But the two girls in Indiana with Bridge Guy, there was a ton of stuff being released in that case and talked about in that case. And not that the defense was at all helpful in some of their filings, but, this stuff affects how it's perceived in the media, affects how the family is feeling and reacting, but also affects whether or not the case can be tried fairly. And if a case can't be tried fairly, that doesn't mean we send the people to jail. That means, guess what? These people never go to jail. They never get a jury trial if we can't find a jury to try them. If it's a tainted jury, it can end in mistrial and the family doesn't get justice. That's the outcome of those things.
I agree. And this is why we have to be very careful how we do and present things, because we want to get justice and somebody out there needs to be behind bars for this crime. So in 2023, you decided, let's do the investigation on my own. You start Stand Our Ground podcast. How did you come about that? What made you finally decide that you wanted to take it to the airwaves?
Yeah, so I was like, I need to know for me. I've never been good with not knowing things. It's part of my anxiety disorder, unfortunately, but I like being able to know what's gone on so I can try and figure things out for myself. And all we had at that time as the family was those newspaper articles and rumors. That was all that we had. We had no idea what was in the police interviews. We had no idea what the police had done or had not done because they weren't informing the family. Like I said, we didn't even know that the house had been officially sold. So I reached out to I was reaching out to some of the really big true crime podcasts because they were the ones I was familiar with. And I was like, please help me cover this case. Please help me figure out what happened. And the biggest problem that we were running into was there was so little information. And a lot of them don't have full research departments that they could not fully do the research, and none of the files were publicly available. So I was like, okay, so I need to get the files. So I went to Escambia County Sheriff's Office and I put in a request. And in my naivete at the time, I requested any and all files relating to, which is very expensive. And so they got back to me with a number that was less than 1,000, but more than 500. And I'm a teacher. And that's not something I can afford. And so I was just, kind of in shock at the number. Had put in this group, I was in this true crime group, like, oh my gosh, I have so much more respect for true crime podcasters. I never realized how expensive it was to get these case files. I tried to get my cousins and it's so unaffordable. I was not expecting this, and had a true crime podcaster who I haven't named because I don't know if they want people to be aware of it or not. And also, if I do anything illegal on accident, I don't want them tied to me. But they reached out to me and they said, okay, so is that something that you can afford? And I was like, no. And they said, okay, how do I get you the money or get the money to this sheriff's office so that you can get the case files? So these case files I have purely because of someone in the true crime community saying you should be able to find out what happened to your cousin, and we can't investigate it right now, but we can get you that. And so once I had that, I was like finding all these things that just didn't make sense. And I was like, oh my God, guys, people, we need to cover this. So I started reaching out to the podcast again. I was like, now I have the information for you. Do you want to cover it now? And they were like, yeah, we're still really busy. And also we can't look through all of them. And I went, if only there was somebody who really wanted to, hold on, that's me. I'm the person who really wants to know what happened and look into this. And I bought this $20 microphone on Amazon. I figured out how to work Spotify and GarageBand, and we just did it. And I've been kind of amazed how it's taken on a life of its own since then. And I have a nice new fancy microphone too that wasn't $20 that I got for my birthday. And it's great because now you can no longer hear my cat meowing in the background when I record. Hopefully.
At that time, did you know about the Freedom of Information Act?
Yes.
Was there nothing in there that you could have followed that for that should have given you the same information?
So I wasn't able to get anything through that. And a big reason of that is because technically what I had to pay for with the case files and would have had to pay for through FOIA is the labor to hunt them down and the cost of making copies. And the big expensive things were the videos. So like the dash cams and the police interviews that were on video, as well as all of the crime scene photos. The audio visual stuff was really the most expensive, but as it turned out, very important to have.
So now if any other piece of evidence comes up in this case, since it's already been paid for, do you automatically get that? Or would you have to go back and be paid for the new stuff too?
No, I don't think they even notify me about it. I think I have to keep asking if there's updated stuff. And that's why in order to get the restraining order, for example, so the restraining order I got separately because I had to go through the courts for that because that wasn't through a Escambia County Sheriff's Office. So I got that through the courts. And right now I'm in the process of requesting from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement the disciplinary records of investigator Jimmy Tatum because I know that he's faced discipline in Escambia County. It's publicly documented on like a thing where they legally have to report it in their like quarterly publication or whatever. But there's not full details. So I went ahead and requested his and anything related to Amy and anything related to Deanna, because if Deanna faced disciplinary action at the Corrections Institute, that's something that's worth knowing. But from what I've been able to find, she hasn't, which is also important to know if she hasn't faced any discipline. So those are all in progress. But yeah, so far, whenever I've emailed Escambia County Sheriff's Office saying stuff is missing and do they have it, they just tell me it's not in our case file. We don't have it. But I feel very sure it was at one point. So a big example of that being the text messages between Megan and Deanna. I don't have those from the police. I have those from a family member who has Deanna's phone.
So in closing, what would you like everybody that's listening right now to know about this case and where you're going with it?
I guess biggest thing I'd like you to know is, it's covered in a ton of detail on my show, Stand Our Ground podcast. We do a little tiny bit at a time on each episode and just started season 2. We're going to be diving into the text messages and that 911 call and a little bit more about this house. If you know anything, heard anything, even if you don't know if it's true, maybe you were at a bar with Amy or Megan and you heard them saying something about the case, please, please, please either contact me, contact David, or can they contact you if they've heard something?
Absolutely.
Contact me, contact David, contact Escambia County Sheriff's Office. Maybe if you contact Escambia County Sheriff's Office, tell somebody else too, because they might not be the most trustworthy. And if you could please contact, the Florida governor, Florida district attorney, any of those people and ask why this case isn't being looked into, why there's been so little investigation. Ask them to reopen this case. Tell everybody please, about this case because it's so unknown. And the thing we know about cases is when there's no attention on them, they don't get solved.
So let me tell you guys, we're not done with this case. So I'm going to tell you what my part in this is now going forward. I say this very lightly because I do know podcast gets very busy. I am on 2 different shows. I produce 3 of them. So I'm not going to say that the podcast that told this was not busy. But this case is so important that we need to get it back out there that this case is going to be fully examined and it's going to be put up on my other podcast, Extinguished. This is why Extinguished was created. We deep dive into murder and lost people's cases to hope to get justice. But when I read all of this information, I finally got LaDonna to sit down and say, did you go through this? The first words I got back is, we're all in. And we're doing what we can now to clear our schedule. So if that means we have to shoot 2 or 3 months ahead of time so that we have them, just so we can spend that time just on this case. We want to deep dive into it, want to call some people, want to figure out what's going on, probably even called Escambia. The good thing about this is I have LaDonna with me. As you know, she's a private investigator, one of the best true crime authors out there. She's been on a cold case for 8 years that we believe she's going to get justice for probably really soon, which is the case of Melissa Wett. So I want you to know this case is that important to us that when I talked to her 2 days ago and I said, why don't we just throw this case in after our next one? That's what I got back. We just need to sit down and take time, if it's 1 or 2 months, just to go through it, just to do it justice. And then we're going to put pressure on people. The governor's going to be alerted. The DA is going to be alerted. Escambia is going to be alerted. They're going to know that somebody else is on this case. So whoever did this, if you're listening to the sound of my voice, we're coming for you. And my partner is, they call her the bulldog because we'll stay on it, hopefully until we get some justice. So you are no longer alone out there in this case. You have somebody else to pick up the fight with you.
And we're so grateful. The family members who have been working on this with me, it's so funny. I messaged one of them. I was like, I was talking to David the other day and they're like, is that guy from LA with the podcast? It's like, yes. And I'll find stuff in the case. And I was like, you need to tell David right now. And I have to tell you guys, I reached out totally on a whim and was like, hey, here's the case. Here's this little trailer I put together to tell you more than I can write down. If you're interested, please tell me. I'm just trying to get people to cover it. And David called me and was like, I'm super interested. I have a lot of questions. I'm in. I've got your back. And I was on my way to work and I just cried. And it's an hour-long drive. And I think I cried for the whole hour.
Well, we're just hoping to get some traction on it, being that we know people listen to our podcast all over the world, and we're just hoping that we can find something because there's definitely something shady about this. And, you and your family is important, but if for nobody else, her son needs to have this closure.
Yeah.
He needs to know what happened to his mom. So we're fully in with you on that.
Thank you so much, truly.
Well, Kiah, I thank you for joining me today. It has been enlightening. Of course, it's not the last time we will speak. So thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. All right, guys. So that was Kiah Penfield. Make sure that you do tune in to her show, Stand Our Ground, on anywhere you listen to podcasts, YouTube, whatever. She puts it up. You want to tune into this. If you want the full explanation, she goes deep diving into everything, and it will make you want to think about this case. Again, also in the coming days or months, look for this to be fully examined by LaDonna and I on Extinguished. We'll get you all the information that you need there. We have all the crime scene photos here, more information than we gave you here today. This was just kind of a little bit of a teaser to get you guys into this. Go look into it yourselves. If you want to contact somebody, go ahead and do that because we're going to be doing the same. Coming at you next week. I told you I was going to have a good one for you. My author is someone that is big in the true crime world. She has worn many hats, has had several TV shows, and is still the host of her own very successful talk show. On top of all of that, she's also a great author. So coming at you next week, Emmy award-winning television host and author of the book Watch Where They Hide, Tamron Hall. You definitely don't want to miss that one. And then, for my extraordinary person, we're going to talk to Megan Connor. Megan herself has been through some things in life. She has suffered from depression for many years and found a way to bounce back from all of that. And on top of all of that, she's related to Lori Vallow Daybell, the murderer of her own children, Tylee and JJ. You don't want to miss the incredible conversation that I had with her. So once again, Tamron Hall and Megan Connor coming at you next week and the week after. You don't want to miss those. All right, before I get out of here, I was going to remind you what we are up to so that you know where we're going. Of course, the other podcast that I'm associated with, Extinguished, of course, with the great LaDonna Humphrey. We drop episodes there every Sunday there. So make sure you tune in if you want to learn about those cases. Also, our appearances. We are appearing at True Crime Fest August 2nd and 3rd of 2024. That's going to be in Arkansas. Make sure you get your tickets now. That link will be down below in the show notes. And also 21st and 22nd of September 2024, we will be at CrimeCon in the UK. If you are going there or just follow CrimeCon, you can get 10% off your ticket by using code EXTINGUISHED when you purchase that ticket. All right, guys. So once again, we want to thank Kiah Penfield. Make sure you're turning in to Stand Our Ground. She would really appreciate it and get more information that way. And I thank you for joining us. I know you have many choices in true crime podcasts, and I'm grateful for the last almost 2 years you guys have chose me. So as always stay humble. An act of kindness can make someone's day. A little love and compassion can go a long way. And remember that there is an extraordinary person in all of us. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.
Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Join us on social media. One link to the link tree has it all. Feel free to drop us a line at truecrimeandauthors@gmail.com. Cover art and logo designed by Arslip. Sound mixing and editing by David McClam. Intro script by Sophie Wild and David McClam. Theme music, Legendary, by New Alchemist. Introduction and ending credits by Jackie Voice. See you next time on True Crime, Authors, and Extraordinary People.